As far as health, how does tofu compare to eating meat?
Um, well, I think first let me answer the question by saying that I think in Hawaii, uh, obviously due to our Asian population, there's a great many Asians or second, third, fourth generation, and tofu has never been seen as anything other than really just a traditional food for them from the plantation days, basically. So you grow up eating this food, you don't really question it. Um, the questions about health and the benefits of tofu and soy products from being healthy for you really came about because of the push to introduce it to the American diet, probably back in the 1960s when these hippies came back from India and the Far East and things like that. Um, and that's when the issue of going meatless and being vegetarian and eating these types of things. Um, in order to get more people to eat it or take part in it, there had to be a certain appeal, and for a lot of them, the appeal was the health benefits. Now, for vegetarians have different ideas about why they're vegetarian. Um, for some people the issue is the cruelty to animals type of thing. For some people, it's uh, just a preference that they feel healthier. Um, However, humans get their protein mostly from meat. Um, so in that respect, tofu serves as the meat substitute. It takes the place of. It's not a complete protein. It does have one or two amino acids missing, but again, it's as close as you can get um, in terms of plants. And so people will use that as a meat substitute to kind of maintain their vegetarian lifestyle. And again, that's fine. But I think specifically in Hawaii, uh, it's not so much an issue about you know why I should eat tofu, because again, people grow up with it. It's not really anything special. Um, it's not a glamorous type of food. It's really just kind of a staple item for people here. So we're kind of lucky in that respect. We never had to fight this, how to introduce this product into the culture or anything like that. Whereas the mainland companies, they had an uphill battle. Took a generation basically to get people to understand what tofu was. Well, the company uh, this year, 2010, is our 60th year anniversary. Um, so really, it's been in our family since 1950, and I don't say it was founded because actually uh, my grandfather he actually got the business. He either purchased it or he got it. I'm not really quite sure, from a friend who was doing two businesses at the same time. One was the tofu business, and one was a pig farm. And so both of those businesses are very labor intensive. It would be next to impossible for just one person to do all of that unless he didn't sleep. And so um, I guess timing wise, it just worked out pretty well because my grandfather started pretty late. He was 50 years old when he actually started working at the tofu factory. But I guess he saw it as an opportunity to own his own business because at the time I had heard he'd been working like three jobs at that time. Now, we're very fortunate, or he was very fortunate, I should say, because again, a little background. He had been working with the Turia brothers. Turia brothers, they ran a restaurant called Times Grill, and in 1949, Times Supermarket opened. They opened the first location, I think, in McCully, if I'm not mistaken. Um, Now, my grandfather was working at the restaurant, Times Grill, with the Turier brothers. When they opened up the supermarket, he moved over with them and became a meat cutter. Then in 1950, the opportunity came up. And the reason I say he was lucky was that a supermarket is a place, a supermarket basically changed the way Americans shop, actually changed the way people shop. Because now you had this store um, where you could get everything that you needed in one place, and you didn't have to go to all the separate little shops, the butcher shop, the bakery, the fish market. You didn't have to do that. You had everything right there. And because of his relation with the Turier brothers, he already had a place to put his product. And that's a big step right there, because traditionally the tofu manufacturers, they would have to make their tofu in the morning, early morning, then they'd have to go out and kind of offer it to the neighborhood. Or, if they were lucky enough to establish a reputation, people would come to them in that neighborhood only. Uh, by tying in with the Turier brothers and Times Supermarket, he had a much larger exposure to people who would go to this central location, make all their purchases, and then go back home. So that's why I say we were rather fortunate. Um, Not to say it wasn't difficult. It was very difficult. I can make probably in an hour the amount of tofu that he would probably take about a day and a half to make right now. So the technology has improved. The efficiencies have improved, and it's just a lot easier than it used to be. There are still challenges, but just different challenges. And so throughout the history, the first location was on Dillingham, close to Honolulu Community College. And the way it was set up was they had a small room that made the tofu, where my grandfather would make the tofu. And in the front, there was this kind of grill, like a tabletop, countertop grill type of thing, that my grandmother ran, like a breakfast and lunch type of place. So they would get a lot of cannery workers going by there. And then when they started to expand and get bigger, they moved to Alamana Farmers Market. And that would have been about 1960, I want to say 64, 65, around there. And around that time, maybe a little earlier, but around that time they actually had a fire. And it wasn't at the factory, it was one of the next stalls over. But the way everything is set up there, it's one long building, and they're just divided by walls. So, there's no separation.
Yeah.
And the fire basically wiped out the factory. So my grandfather had a decision to make, to just kind of chuck it and give up and find something else to do, or try to continue. The interesting thing was he had just ordered some machines, and they were sitting in a warehouse, separate location, and they were new. So I guess he didn't really have a choice. He had to pay off the machines that he had purchased, and they were new. So why not put them to use? Back around 1960s, the business relationships that you had in Hawaii, a lot of them were handshake deals. You could talk to the different guys and approach them and ask them. So even though they had been carrying some debts because of like buying supplies and stuff, the other businesses were willing to allow them to put off the payment until they got back on their feet. And so this is basically what happened. That they were given some time. The farmers market was rebuilt. They moved back in, and everything worked. I mean, they continued on. So although it was a major setback, it just I think it's an illustration of how well the relationships worked back then. That they were willing to trust each other. I think a little bit more. So about 1976, they purchased the land and they constructed the building that now houses Aloha Tofu. And so we've been in this location here since 1970, so about 34 years, our longest stint. And it's been very good. The second generation after my grandfather retired, they took over. There are four brothers and two sisters in the second generation. They all eventually joined back into the company, and it was a true family business. So they all worked together. They expanded. They brought it more success until it became the largest tofu manufacturer in Hawaii. The one thing my grandfather, my father, my uncles always kind of emphasize is of course, the product has to be fresh. You want to emphasize the freshness of the product, and you want to give the customers, of course, the best tofu as possible. But the other thing was also that you make sure you take care of the employees. And so we do try to, in terms of benefits, to compensate and make sure the employees are satisfied and happy. And for small businesses anywhere, but especially in Hawaii, it's a big challenge. Costs continue to rise, and yet you feel like you can't raise prices every year. It becomes too much of a burden on your consumers. So yeah, it's a delicate balance right there. That of course you want to stay in business, and that's the whole point of having the business. But yet you also we feel we have a tie to our customers. We're not out here to just take them for whatever they have. It's more of a kind of a relationship type of deal, that you want to provide customers with something that they want, and hopefully they'll continue to come back.